so much. I love you so much. I love you so much. I love you so much.
Hello, all you positive heads out there. Thanks for tuning your beautiful brainwaves into another episode of the Positive Head Podcast, where we are firmly convinced that creating success and happiness is rooted in understanding the ultimate nature of reality and the fact that as human beings, we are all immensely powerful fractals of the one and only source consciousness which creates and animates all things. After years of exploring this awe-inspiring truth on this podcast, I'm super excited to announce that we are now going even deeper down the rabbit hole on the new late-night style consciousness-elevating talk show called Optimistic, which features none other than you, the listeners. Optimistic is taped out of the epic spaceship-esque 8-bedroom property we call the Mystic Manor that myself and the rest of the Optimistic crew now navigate reality from in Venice Beach, California. And you are invited to come experience a Mystic Manor immersion week with us. During your week-long stay, you'll enjoy unique workshops, chef-prepared meals, one-on-one time coaching and consulting with me, and even co-creating magic with me as a guest on both Optimistic and an episode of the Positive Head podcast. When I started this, my aim with these immersive retreats was to facilitate the ultimate spiritual upgrade and tune-up, so to speak, for our guests while providing them with one of the most memorable experiences of their lives. And I'm happy to say that as of this recording, every guest at the end of their trip so far has told me that they have had a profound and transformational experience at the Mystic Manor and that they definitely want to come back. All that being said, we only have a limited number of spots available between now and next July. And as of this recording, about half of those spots are already filled. So if there's any part of you that is screaming, yes, I want to come, I feel like I need to be there, go now and book a slot with me to discuss how we can put our heads together and make it happen at calendly.com/talkwithbrandon. I know for some people there is also that little voice in their head saying, why not? I can't get off work. I can't afford it, and on and on and on. But, really Henry Ford, I think, said it best. Whether you think you can or think you can't, you're right. And I'm confident that where there's a will, there's a way. And I'm personally committed to doing everything in my power, including discounts and payment plans, to get you here if it is something that truly feels like a huge yes for you energetically and like you're meant to be here. Once again, the link to book time to discuss with me is calendly.com/talkwithbrandon. That's spelled calendly.com/talkwithbrandon. All one word, of course. And book in some time and look forward to seeing you soon here at the Mystic Manor. All right, all you positive heads. On this week's Soul Share episode, I'm very excited to have Dr. Christiane Northrup here with me on the show. Christiane is a New York Times best-selling author who was recognized by Oprah's own network as a Super Soul 100 soul igniter for her visionary and pioneering work in women's health, among other things. Christiane, welcome to the show. So glad to have you here.
Oh, it's fun to be here. Anything called Positive Head, we need as many of those as we can find.
Yes, we do. Yes, we do. I love to refer to all the listeners as P-heads. So
it's really good.
Once upon a time, someone was trying to come up with a nickname like Positivians or something. I'm like, no. How about P-heads?
That's good. That's
and
great.
It stuck. So the question the P-heads know that I have a very predictable opening question and cliche outro question, and my predictable opening is this.
All right.
You're in an elevator.
Mm-hmm.
You're in an elevator. Mm-hmm. The woman next to you looks over, says, "What's your passion?" You have 10 floors to answer. What do you say?
Joy, dancing, music. And,
I like it.
and, also I have to tell you, my passion really, really is like midwifing people's joy. Like, I was born with under a gibbous moon, and that's the moon just before the full moon. And so what I'm really good at is seeing somebody's potential and passion, and then kind of bringing it into being. And I became an OBGYN, so I did a tremendous amount of standing by while people gave birth. And
Yeah.
I kind of know how to support birth. And when you watch
Right.
Call the Midwife or any of those shows and the baby's born and everybody cries, it's a big deal and it never gets old. So, when we have those makeover shows that Oprah used to do and all that, we all love that story, like the before and the after, and being the person who is supporting that birth in somebody is just a kick.
Right.
Just a kick. Yeah.
I so relate to that. I mean, this podcast has been that for me as well, just helping people to, as I put it, remember who and what they truly are, and learn to shift and sift perspectives to, lead them into a life that is more aligned with what they want to see more of and create more of in their life. And I've done a lot of cool things, but nothing as fulfilling as helping people sort of cross that bridge and birth their new, go from the caterpillar to the butterfly in some sense. And as I also always add to that, we teach best what we most need to learn.
Always.
So this has been sort of like this public, okay, I'm doing it. I'm working on this. What are you working on? Oh, what do you know? You happen to be working on the same thing and we're doing it together. And so, it really is. It's so rewarding to serve in that way, I feel.
Yes, it really is. And isn't it interesting that when you're working on a certain thing, like, okay, so right now, one of the things I'm working on is really a refinement of I'm not someone's higher power. All right. And they have
right.
their own. And if they have a tricky situation with their health, it ultimately is between them and God. And I have been, in most of my career has been having answers that the mainstream doesn't think exist. So it can get you
Right.
into this thing where you believe, oh my God, they've come to me as a last resort, or they've tried everything else. And what if I can't help? You see. And so I realized
Right.
that I'm not anyone's higher power. I never was. And it can be kind of an addiction. Now, that would be from my days of clinical practice. I've had a lot less of this, but recently a very good friend has had a mystery illness. And I've done everything I know, and he's still not getting better. And I realized, okay, you got to step back, honey. So that's what I'm working on.
Yeah, that's a good one. It's like, it brings up another thing that, this whole idea of like sort of a guru and like, oh my gosh, you are my savior. And it's like, we're all our own savior.
Oh, yeah. I mean, that's of course one of the reasons why I wrote Dodging Energy Vampires. It's like every ashram I would go to, almost all, and every person in the self-help space, there's a guru trap there.
Yeah.
Where they just become it. They become it. And then when you look behind the scenes, it's like, so many churches have a minister or a priest who's sexually abusing kids, and so many gurus are having sex with the devotees. And I've seen so much of this in the 80s, 90s. So you're absolutely right. People have to, I think this is a time, and we also have Saturn conjunct Pluto right now, with the exact conjunction coming in January of 2020. But since 2012, we've been under a lot of pressure to own our own power, take back our own life. My colleague Kelly Brogan just wrote a book called Own Yourself. And as a psychiatrist, she used to give psych meds to everybody. That's how she was trained at Bellevue. And then she realized, wait a minute. You can make a case that what we call mental illness and anxiety, depression. This is not a Prozac deficiency, folks. This is
Right.
something that, that you need to look at. And so with a podcast called Positive Head, we're really talking about how do you balance your own serotonin, beta endorphin, dopamine, oxytocin, prolactin, because the body knows how to produce every single one of those.
Yeah.
So
Yeah,
anyway, that's my riff on that.
I love that. Yeah, we are a walking pharmacy, and it's I had a really powerful breath work session last night, and
Man,
I came out of it thinking like, this is like a plant medicine journey. You don't need, to go to these external, substances when, just someone who's depressed, after what I just went through, it's like, try holotropic breath work and see what happens to your depression then. See what happens to your energy body. Your whole body will be buzzing with all of this. The person next to me was having powerful experiences merging with the universe. The one next to them was like, oh my gosh, I just met my spirit guides during this. It's like these powerful experiences that can happen. And just by changing our state and, of all the things that have been tried for someone who's depressed, it's like, I bet you 95% of them have never just sat down and done, deep breathing exercises. And it's like so simple from one perspective, and the results can be so profound. And I just named that one just because it's something that I just did last night, and it's a pretty powerful experience. And so it's interesting, all of the how complex we can make things a lot of times when really there's these simple solutions.
That's right. That's exactly right.
So let's talk a little bit about, you've written several books and, have been very, very well received by the world at large. Obviously, that's quite the cool distinction that the OWN Network gave you there. And so let's talk about your latest book. And it's all about energy vampires, as you touched on a little bit. And I find this topic very interesting, and haven't read the book, but would love to sort of get the high level download of what you're covering there.
Yes. Okay. So what I noticed over the years is that there's in psychiatry, they're called cluster B. This is people with, you can either call it a personality disorder or a character disorder. And it's a spectrum. So on the low end, down like in the 1, 2, and 3, you have your garden variety narcissist. It's all about them. They're self-centered. They get everyone to give stuff to them and so on.
Right.
And then at the highest end, we have Harvey Weinstein, Bill Cosby, Jeffrey Epstein. We've got the true psychopaths or sociopaths. And these are people with essentially no conscience, like none. And what our society has done with this, because we have not understood it, we have decided the narrative is, well, they hurt people because they've been hurt in childhood. So if you look at the popular HBO series, Big Little Lies, the narrative with this guy who beats the crap out of Nicole Kidman is that he's like that because of what his mother did to him when he was little. The truth is, and this is very, very hard for people like us in positive headspace, believing that we're all one, the quantum field, love is the energy that holds the universe together. And it's very hard for us to actually get our mind around the fact that there are people who really don't have your best interest at heart, never did, and some are born that way. And, so it's your basic bully. And George Simon wrote a book called In Sheep's Clothing. And he said he wrote it, he's worked for, 30 years, huge career, on helping people recognize this pattern so that they don't stay in a marriage or a job for 30 years, putting themselves into a pretzel to try to please this person. Because these people, I call them energy vampires, live off of what is called narcissistic supply. Narcissistic supply is money, attention, sex, adulation, Mostly attention, but attention, money, and sex, like stuff from the outside. When you prick the balloon of their ego, nobody's there. Nobody's there. There's, your whole show, my whole career is about teaching people to find the source within, to find God as God comes through him or her. These people they're so out of touch with who they are, they've created a false persona. Now, they prey on a certain group of people known as empaths. Empaths is kind of the new normal. People who feel the pain of the world, people who want to help, people who can feel that we need organic food, that the soil needs to be replenished. People who many times don't know where they end and another person begins because they have empathy, but not much in the way of boundaries. And so there's a duality of the energy vampire empath duality, where the energy vampire doesn't take responsibility for their health. They're professional victims. As I'm speaking to whoever is listening, I want you to notice what names are popping up in your head. Because every time I start talking, you will, because I'll tell you why. 1 in 5 people is in this category. 1 in 5.
Wow.
That's a lot of people.
That's a
but
whole lot.
remember, it's a lot of people. And so, but I said it's a spectrum, like in the autism spectrum. So you can go to, the person's a little Aspergery, to, a 25-year-old male who wears adult diapers, doesn't speak, and groans.
Right.
All right.
Right.
So there's a spectrum. So the lower end you can kind of live with if you call them on their stuff.
Right.
The higher end, they are just going to play you. There's a great book called Snakes in Suits, and it is about the sociopaths who run most major corporations.
Wow.
I wouldn't say most, but a lot. Because if you let's look at the corporate salaries of CEOs.
Right.
They're obscene.
Yeah.
They are obscene at this point.
Yeah.
And, so we have a culture in which there's this kind of vampire empath dynamic where the vampires are certain that they deserve all the best stuff. I had a friend with these tendencies. She would go and they're often, let's be clear, they're often beautiful, charismatic.
Yep.
You can't take your eyes off them. I want you to think of Hollywood.
Yeah.
I could name names. I won't.
Yeah.
And so what us mere mortals just want to press our nose against the glass, because why couldn't we have that glamorous, glorious lifestyle where doors are just opened for them? And I had a friend who would walk into a restaurant and instantly claim the best table at the window.
Right.
She'd just set herself down there. Just set herself down, put her purse down.
Entitled much?
She was almost, It's just, 6 feet tall almost, blonde, was a model for a while. And do you think that the mere mortals would go over to her and say, ma'am,
Right.
that table's been taken? She'd sit there and fight them.
Yeah. Wow.
I mean, I once was out to dinner with her, and there were a lot of glasses on the table because we hadn't, the waitress was in another room. And finally the waitress comes in and my friend looks at her and says, well, we'll have another round of glasses. Meaning, you should have thought a long time ago to clear those.
Oh, wow.
So we think about let's look at Woody Allen, right? And his son. We let society turns away. They are often enabled. They're terribly enabled. Oftentimes, let's say that your son or daughter is one of these people. Well, then because they're such professional victims, they'll run to mom or dad and be enabled to stay stuck. And so they don't, why do we call it a character disorder? Because they don't act right. They don't have good character. They don't take responsibility for what they've just done. The empath, on the other hand, so let's be clear, the empath takes too much responsibility.
Right.
So the
other end of the
energy
spectrum.
you got it. The energy vampire is born with a superior ego. They think they're better than. The empath is born with an inferior ego.
Right.
And so I'm going to assume that most of your listeners are empaths,
Yeah.
more on the empath
Sure.
scale. And so what we do, we look for things to improve about ourselves. That's how we keep our inferior ego alive. We look for all the things we haven't done perfectly yet. And the vampire just keeps telling you all the things you haven't done perfectly yet, so that you keep looking to them. And I want to explain how they work, because everyone will notice this. They tell you in the beginning. So let's say, I've had both of these, both in work and in love relationships, but they tell you everything you've always wanted to hear. They quote, get you. They have I call it malignant intuition. They know just what you need to hear to keep you hooked.
Yep.
And you finally go, oh my God, someone who finally gets me.
Right.
That handsome man gets me. Or in the case of a man like yourself, there are these gorgeous women who have what we call borderline personality disorder. You cannot make them happy no matter what you do.
Yeah.
And I like to say that the roads are strewn with the carcasses of men who've had their life juice sucked out of them by energy vampires.
Right.
Every good guy I know, every single good guy I know, has had some kind of encounter with one of these women. They often look like a 10, and inside they're so dark. And no matter what the guy does, no matter how much he tries to please her, because a normal, healthy man is, or let's call it, in this age of gender fluidity, let's say that the yang energy, the masculine energy, as it exists across the board, wants to protect and serve. That's what the masculine energy does. And so when you get one of these energy vampires who you cannot help, so what men do, many men or many women with good masculine qualities feel that they can help. I really have put myself in that situation a lot, that, oh my God, you fall in love with their potential.
Yeah.
You'll never see it.
Yeah.
But they'll give you just enough of a crumb that you'll keep going. And what you live with, and this came out beautifully in the Rajneesh documentary called Wild Wild Country.
Yeah.
Where, and if you haven't seen that and you want to know how this plays out, just watch that Netflix documentary. But the one woman at the end who literally went along with the first act of bioterrorism in the United States, they literally were poisoning the food of the local residents with some kind of very, very toxic E. coli.
Yeah.
She went along with it. She said that what the guru thing is what if the carrot at the end of the stick is enlightenment in this kind of a thing, where they went through, Rajneesh convinced him to have sex with anything, especially if you didn't like the person, men with men, women with women, probably with animals, I don't know. And but they're all seeking this elusive thing outside themselves called enlightenment, or feeling better about yourself. And the energy vampire knows this and can keep you on the hook, giving you just enough to keep you going. And if you are what I call an old soul empath with super traits, and that's the work of Sandra Brown, who wrote Women Who Love Psychopaths, and she did some very hardcore research on these super traits. And super traits are super traits of loyalty, conscientiousness, hardworking, can do. She found there were a group of women that didn't fit the sort of victim-y, learned helplessness kind of thing, where they weren't codependent. They weren't, they were at the top of their game. They were lawyers, they were CEOs, they were doctors, they were social workers. They had no problem in the world at all. The problem was with the intimate relationships. And the reason is this: they would bring the same high level traits to the relationship with a vampire, thinking that they could rehab this person
Right.
in whom they could see all the potential. Well, you can't. You can't. And the deal is to finally realize what you're dealing with. But Sandra said, if you tell a woman with super traits that there's 1 in a million chance that
Right.
man she loves
Right.
will wake up and have true contrition, and he'll see what he's done and get down on his knees and apologize. She said, if you just tell her, it's like that movie Dumb and Dumber. What do you mean there's a chance?
Yeah, right,
You know,
right. So you're saying there's a chance.
So you're saying there's a chance. That's it. You tell someone with super traits that, and they'll hang out for 40 years
Yeah.
in a marriage waiting for the moment that person turns to them and says, oh, you were right all along.
Right.
And remember how we began this podcast, where I said to you that one of my things that lights me up more than anything is to enable that and to fan the flames of someone's potential until they are actually living it.
Yeah.
Well, with an energy vampire, you will never see it.
Mm-hmm.
You must assume you will never see it. And so when when we're doing this podcast, I think about the people who will be listening, the spiritual people, the good people. They want to do what's right. And yet they have a father, a mother, a son, a daughter, a husband, a wife who has these traits.
Yeah.
And they're doing everything in their power. Oh, I want to give you a medical thing. In Sandra Brown's retreats, 70, 80% of the women have so-called mystery illnesses. They have lupus, they have autoimmune disease, they have arthritis, they have Sjogren's syndrome.
Wow.
And that is
Empathing
because
the energy vampires stuff, you think?
Well, no. Well, what it really is they are losing their own energy.
Yeah.
So they're leaking energy everywhere, so that their tank is empty.
Yeah.
You don't have enough energy to do your own life. This is why a lot of these people, I've had a friend of mine said, why do smart women go for these men? And I look at him and I go, why do smart men go for these women who look so good and are so evil? The truth is that we have lessons to learn in self-worth.
Yeah.
And these people are our most profound teachers. But once you've gotten the lesson, you don't have to rub your nose in it.
Yeah.
And so what I've found is all these people, they drink green juice, they exercise, they meditate, and they don't get well because they're with a person who says, I love you, and I'm only doing this because I love you. And then the empath believes in love, believes in the quantum field of light, believes that gravity is basically love that holds the universe together.
Yep.
And yet they have this person who is anything but loving, but is telling them that this is how they love them. This creates what's called cognitive dissonance in the brain. You can't put those two things together. And over time, you can get what's called executive function problems in the brain, where these women literally can't think straight because up is down and down is up.
Yeah.
And it's called gaslighting from that old movie where the guy was trying to make the woman think she was crazy by turning down the gas lights and then telling her, I don't know what you're seeing. I didn't see that happen.
Right.
So that's where the term gaslighting came from, that everyone throws around the term and never tells you what that actually is. So I wanted to tell you what that is.
Yeah. That's good info.
Yeah. So remember, it's 1 in 5 people. They prey on empaths and those with lots of light. And our job is to bump up our self-worth, understand our empathy as a superpower. But here's the biggie. This is the big take-home message. You are the only place that can create in your own life. You cannot make it better for an energy vampire. Oh, and I want to tell you the really bad news if you're in love with one of these characters. The minute you set a boundary and stick up for yourself, they will go find someone else within maybe 15 minutes. And if you've been married to them for 25 years, it will break your heart.
Yeah.
You will think to yourself, wait a minute, 25 years? Did he or she ever really love me? And the answer to that is probably not, because they're not capable of it with the current personality that they're running around with. It's not real love. It just isn't. And you'll have to come to grips with that, because they will be remarried in 15 minutes and you'll be left reeling. So therefore, the take-home message is, if someone's worth being with, you can set a boundary, you can state what your need is, and they will respect that. Mm-hmm. And if they don't, get out.
Yeah.
Get out. Yeah. But most people, are afraid of being alone, and they think that, well, I'd rather be with this person than be alone. And I'll tell you what, you are never so alone as when you're with one of these people, because no one's home with them either. They're just waiting for you to to blow up their balloon.
Yeah, they're just there feeding essentially, and you are the lunch. I mean, I can't help but think of, I had a former business partner that was, oh my gosh, so all of these things and more, and it was like his whole life. Every statement out of his mouth is a manipulation to try and get what he wants. Yes. It's like, how do I say? How much information do I give? How much do I withhold? How do I twist it? Do I need to lie? Do I need to share just 80% of it, 30% of it? Everything's an angle to try and suck more out of, the situation. And
that's right.
Yeah. And there's so.
And let me just say.
Sorry, go ahead.
Yeah, something about that's important. And that is, if you had a business partner like this, I would imagine that you did everything in your power to approach it in a rational way, or to call him on his stuff, right?
Yep.
Yep. And here's what happens. Okay. And Sandra Brown has a great phrase. She said, they are sicker than we are smart. So they will come up with some manipulation of what you just said that you couldn't have figured out in a million years. And the big mistake we all make is we think that they think like we do, and that they feel like we do. And they are so outrageous that in a million years, if we can't do what they do, we can't say what they're literally
such a professional.
As another, they're a species. They're a different species. And I actually believe I'm a big fan of Lee Carroll, who channels Cryon. And I'll just out myself now, about that. And he said that on our planet, there is no question that we, as a free will zone, Earth is a free will zone. As a free will zone, we have allowed some dark energy in to mess with us.
Yeah.
Like, is there evil? Yes.
Right.
Yes.
Right.
I mean, the sooner we realize that, it's like the collective evolution media stuff that Joe Martino does.
Right.
I love Joe. He delves into all the stuff that the mainstream media will not talk about.
Right.
Because the mainstream media, frankly, is the flying monkeys of the dark forces that have been running the planet for 5,000 years. But the gig is up. The jig is up with the dark forces, because they're fighting for their lives right now. Just like a vampire does. The minute, we call it a sociopath in peril.
Yeah.
The minute that they know you're onto them, they either ramp up their game. I mean, this is when, when a restraining order is placed with somebody, that's when a woman knows she's likely to get killed. The minute you set a boundary, they escalate. And they don't give up. If you've been in relationship with a vampire, they'll still be contacting you 20 years later.
Yeah.
So your job is to, put up a great boundary. I want to give everyone an exercise that I learned from Jill Blakely, who's an acupuncturist in New York. She runs the Yin Ova Center. So here's a good exercise. Let's put an energy rope or tap root right into the center of the earth through your feet, so that you've got that cord right into the center of the earth to ground you. And now open up the crown of your head wide and have all of this light pouring in so that it forms, you're fully grounded, it forms an orb around your body, this sort of light orb around your body. And now, when that's all set, which you can do in 2 seconds in your imagination, which makes it real, then you just pulse light from 360 degrees in that energy egg, pulse it out quickly, boom, and then the darkness will just fall off you. If you just you just press that egg energy out with a big burst of light, and the darkness will just fall off you. And that's a good thing you can do walking down the streets of New York or before going home for Thanksgiving. And it's the other thing is don't expect too much of yourself. Let's say that there's someone you've got to see sometimes, your mother, let's say. So what you do with that is, and if you have been married to one of these and you're going through a divorce, they're going to continue to lie. And in the court system, they have all this thing called kids first. That's a bunch of baloney, because there's no narcissist who's ever going to put the kids first. The kids are all about wounding the other partner.
Right.
So there's a app called My Family Wizard, where you make agreements to who's going to pick them up when, who's going to do this, that, and the other thing. And you can't change it. So it's admissible in court. Because one of the things that the vampire does is they're playing a shell game always.
Yeah,
I
right.
had a friend who was married to one of these. She was a very high-powered woman, some kind of producer in a big city, and he made a lot less money. Every time he would try to go on vacation with his current love, she would change the pickup time. She would change her vacation so that she would make it so hard for him to get away and have a good time. So they will spend a lot of time trying to wound you. And then the other thing you don't want to do ever is try to get normal people to see your point of view. I mean, you feel like you're crazy. So you say, wait a minute, can't you see what he or she is doing? And the truth is, most people can't see it because the energy vampire is so charming that everyone thinks you're the crazy one.
Right.
Now, over time, they will see it. But your job is to keep your mouth shut, walk away, and you need to have a couple people like a reality check. So I have a couple of friends who've divorced energy vampires. And at first they would call me to see, am I crazy? This is what he's doing, that kind of thing, like writing wonderful notes. And, I'm so glad we raised the children together, and please meet me because I want to talk about money. And, that's just to manipulate you.
Sure.
So they would call me. You need a reality check, someone who sees the pattern, because by and large, these clowns have manipulated the media and the population and families for centuries. We're just now waking up to this. So when each individual wakes up and becomes the power that they are, you make it easier for the next person. And so now my friend, like one of my friends called me yesterday, and I had said to her, now listen, your husband is going to be with someone else in 15 minutes. Can you live with that?
Yeah.
She said, yeah, I just, she was getting pneumonia. I thought she was going to die.
Wow.
And so sure enough, he married an heiress. So now he comes over to get narcissistic supply, her attention,
Right.
Even though he's married to this woman with more money than God.
Right.
He comes over to tell her how to save money on international phone calls. And he's going on and on because he's traveling to Europe now regularly.
Right.
I mean, come on. This is a guy, the minute she married him, he stopped working, had his gallbladder out, and she supported the whole family and the son from his first marriage. She supported all of that for 20 years until she woke up. So, but she called me simply to brag, to celebrate that she saw the pattern and didn't get hooked. And when he left, she wasn't tired at all.
Right.
Because you feel like you can fall into your bowl of soup around these people. Empaths
Yeah.
naturally give out their energy.
Right.
We can't help ourselves. So when you notice that's happened, you will get to the point where you're very high vibration and you see what's going on, but you have sustained the high vibration long enough. You don't doubt yourself. You understand that your body is the only place you can create heaven on earth. So you step away from the edge. You don't donate bone marrow anymore. And you find that you're living this incredible life and that they're no longer welcome in your sphere. It's a beautiful thing to realize there's this whole life ahead without this kind of energy.
Right. And I feel like for a lot of people, it's almost like a rite of passage to go through these characters. And, almost everyone listening has probably had some level of interaction either in the past or currently with a character like this. And so once you can identify it, and then it comes down to this idea, the way I always put this, Christiane, is, we are here to learn self-love, first and foremost. It's like the number one thing on everyone's agenda, although we have these varied paths. I believe that, and I believe it's, as fractals of source consciousness, what is ultimately going on there? Well, it's ultimately God, higher self, the universe, consciousness, whatever you want to call it. It's if it's one, it's alone, right? So self-love is the thing that it ultimately is on a journey of discovery. So anytime someone is approaching and dealing with this idea of like, oh my gosh, like you said earlier, I'd rather be with this shell of a person or this vampire than be alone. And from my perspective, it's like you're not going to avoid dealing with learning self-love and some level of aloneness because you're a fractal of source and that is its story and you are it and it is you. And so, that's how I view this. And I think if you can apply that perspective to your analysis of your relationships, it always comes back to, okay, am I going to honor myself first and foremost? The greatest sin we can commit is against ourselves and sacrificing ourselves for someone else. And self-love is the only game in town, the ultimate thing that I have to learn anyway. And for me, that really empowers me to never settle and to cut any cords with someone who is just not in alignment with where I'm at and where I'm headed.
That's exactly right. And here's the thing. In a way, you're never alone. And what you find when you get these people out of your life, especially, when you've been married to one or living with one, the relief that you find. I remember one I was in a friendship relationship with, but she sort of took over my life because they do that. What they like to do, if they have a really good source of narcissistic supply.
Yeah.
Then they will do everything in their power, just like the battered woman thing we always hear about, is they isolate you, they take away your phone, they take away your car keys. Well, in this case, this person was in my house when I would come home from a speaking engagement. She was trying to make herself completely indispensable. Everything was a drama. They live in constant shakeup and drama. So, as one of my friends, a dating coach, said to her, because she was drawn to these characters, because we tend to be.
Yeah.
She said, "Are you willing to be with someone who you might find a little bit boring at first?"
Interesting.
Because these are larger than life characters, and but what you find is when the drama is done, when there's no more drama. And there's a peace. I think, Jesus called it the peace that passeth understanding.
Right.
There's this wonderful peace. And I can remember when I would be home alone on a Friday night and it was just me for a while, me and a cat. And it was so heavenly to finally have come home to myself.
Yeah.
Oh my God. Oh my God. Now, having said that, I realize that far too many people are lonely. I know that. And that's so unfortunate. There's a million ways to get involved and not have to be with an energy vampire in order to not be alone. But I will tell you, We all have to come home to ourselves. We all have to realize, when you're alone with yourself, you have to start realizing, hey, wait a minute, I am pretty good company.
Yeah.
Because if this larger than life, gorgeous creature, charismatic creature wanted to be with me, there must be something I have that they don't have.
Right.
And you would be right. You
Right.
would be right. I can't even begin to tell you how many famous people I have known who just don't like themselves very
Yeah.
well.
Right.
It doesn't matter how it looks. It doesn't matter. What matters is what it's like inside.
Right.
What is it like, to be with these people? So I'm at the point where I'd much rather be with just a down home family here in Maine, all playing a game or taking a hike, than be in the home of some wealthy, well-known energy vampire.
Yeah.
I've done that. It's no fun. It's like literally you feel it. Nobody is home.
Yeah.
This is a house made on sand.
Right.
It's not real. It's not real. Yeah.
Yeah, that's a very powerful perception. So many people are chasing the, they're sort of always looking to social climber. And how do I get up closer?
Yes.
How do I get up closer to someone who's somebody, and constantly assessing, what's your resume? Who are you? What do you do? Oh, okay. You're worth social climbing. How do I get closer? How do I, and this is such another great piece of the puzzle with, that past partner I referenced. That was his whole MO. How do I get up higher? How do I get closer to more millionaires? How do I'll disrupt, I'll chew up and spit anyone out I have to, and that's ultimately where our relationship came to an end, where we brought in another business partner who's worth, tens of millions of dollars. And it's like, here's my next train. I at first attached onto you, Brandon, but now here's someone with a lot more resources. Let me step on your neck to get closer to them and make you look as bad as I can, and that whole thing. And so it's, but really the hilarious part of that is, that it doesn't really, like you just said, once you're okay with the more simple, healthy relationships in your life, and it's not, they talk about enlightenment isn't so much as adding on things, but stripping things away. And the irony of it all is, you get there and you're next to that big wig so-and-so, and they're this weird, entitled, I'm not going to stereotype and say everyone who's famous is like this, but there is
no. Many are not, but there's a lot of them. There's a lot of them. And I love what you're saying, because you think that someone else is going to come in and save you.
Yeah.
I can remember people would say to me, well, can't you get some more celebrity endorsements?
Yeah.
It's like, no. Well, first of all, in my line of work, I did see a fair number of celebrities, and but I never, ever, 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 ever would I reveal to anyone the name and the condition of who I saw.
Right.
I couldn't do it.
Right.
It's like I'm a vault for the privacy of these individuals. So there needs to be some sacred space here.
Yeah, right.
And our culture is a little crazy about this culture of celebrity, right?
Yeah.
We're crazy. Like, if you can get a celebrity to like you or endorse you, you've somehow made it.
Yeah, it's so silly. I think sorry, go ahead.
Go ahead.
I was going to say, I feel like the good thing about it, that whole piece is it's almost like the celebrity wall is coming down to some degree. It's not, I think, 30 years from now, it could be like, celebrities kind of like not even that important, because almost anyone can sort of achieve it, whereas in the past, you think back to the 50s or something, it was like this very, select group. And to get in that group was just like near impossible. And these people were like mythic. And, now it's like, oh, well, you have social media. You can talk to them directly, perhaps. You're seeing what they had for dinner. It's getting, at least I feel like the wall is coming down. Now, all of a sudden, it's like, well, is celebrity really important if, whoever, some person figures out how to get 1 million Instagram followers and they're more popular than the person on the big TV show on social media. It's like, oh, well, it's kind of, in a sense, I feel like it's like a somewhat of a good disruption because everyone becomes a celebrity, then no one's a celebrity.
That's exactly right. So, but I think the first thing, there is an amazing energy that we can each have. Like, okay, so this is going to seem funny, but if you've ever watched the Westminster Dog Show on television, I think it's on Thanksgiving Day or the day after or something.
Everyone's probably at least caught a glimpse of it.
Or we watch Best in Show, right? The movie. Or if you've gone to a horse show, there's something interesting. A champion dog, like a Best in Show champion dog, knows it's a champion.
Right.
It's like it's everywhere around them. I saw a picture once of a champion stallion from some horse show, and I was like, oh my God, power and championship just exuded from that horse. Now, we know the horse is not an energy vampire. The horse just has this DNA and lineage of champion. Right. So each of us needs to find the champion within us, and we can do that. Finding the one thing that you're really, really, really great at.
Yeah.
And being that.
Yeah.
Being that. I know that we can do that, but you've got to get a handle on this narcissistic empath duality and begin to laugh at yourself, see these people as the biggest teachers in your whole lives, but don't stay after you have your postdoctoral dissertation done.
Right. You get the message, hang up the phone.
Now, here's one of the things that I have said to people in the book, Dodging Energy Vampires, and I also have an online course, where I've interviewed the biggest experts in the field. Mm-hmm. What you do is you judge your recovery by how long it took you to figure it out. So maybe if you had a parent who was an energy vampire, then chances are very good that you're going to marry someone who's exactly like mom or dad, because that is encoded in you as love. This is what love and family feels like, kind of thing. Right. And but then you get divorced, you wake up, you see how that's going. Then you have a boss who's like this. Then after that, a friend. So the timeline can be, all right, so first one was 30 years. Right. Next one was 20 years. Next one was 10. Next one was 3. Next one was 1, until you can see them coming a mile away. So let me give you my, this is my rule of thumb. And if you have some empaths on there who haven't realized that there is, in fact, darkness in the world, you won't like what I'm about to say, but that's okay with me. It took me a long time to not care what you think. All right. And that is, if a man or a woman is too good looking and they appear to have it all together too much, they have to work harder than anyone else to gain my friendship, my attention, or my approval. Because what happens to a good-looking person in this culture is they invariably get full service for self-service prices just because of how they look. Yeah. And so they never had to develop themselves. Yep. And this is it's a terrible burden, actually.
I always say that. I always say that about like beautiful women, like really beautiful women. A lot of times, by the time they've had 25 years of, being just like pandered to, and they're sort of, a lot of times it ruins them. They're just like so entitled. And I'm not saying always, obviously there's everything out there. And it's so refreshing when you see that person who is so stunning inside and out. But there's so many who had just like, I've often said it, the same thing you're just saying. It's like, it's a great challenge to, they've never, all these men that are just like, how do I make your life easier and serve you and make, open all the doors and give you all the things, and here's money, and here's, and they don't even know how to work or do anything because they haven't had to.
That's why we say narcissists don't age well. Okay, that's a very good phrase. Narcissists don't age well.
Interesting.
Yeah. I remember a friend of mine, a former friend, and she was distraught when she was somewhere in her late 40s. Mm-hmm. And she said men no longer turned their heads to look at her when she walked into a room, because that's a form of power.
Right. They take an energy.
And I thought, yeah, it's power and energy. Men no longer turned their heads to look at her. And I remember thinking, especially now, 20 years later, thank God that if anyone turned to look at me, I never even noticed. Thank God.
Yeah.
Because it allowed me to develop this entire inner life.
Yeah.
Where it had nothing to do with how it looks.
Yep.
Nothing. Absolutely nothing.
Yeah.
And so, I think that that's an important lesson. It's an important lesson for men. I always wanted to give a course for men, by the way. Young men, I wanted to say to them who to avoid to have a happy life. And first thing is, you got to avoid the women who aren't smiling. If you go into a bar or a party or whatever, and someone looks kind of sad and vulnerable and she's not smiling, just give her wide berth, steer clear.
Yeah.
You cannot. A man, most men, most of the time like to please women.
Yeah.
Whether it's their mother, their sister, their wife, they like to. It's part of the, protect and serve.
Yep.
But these women, there's an abyss inside.
Yeah.
And I had a therapist once. He said, they're like the bears in Yellowstone. You feed the bear until finally the bear eats you.
Right.
Yeah. And so the whole reason, why would somebody like myself, who wrote Women's Bodies, Women's Wisdom, and The Wisdom of Menopause, and Goddesses Never Age, and Making Life Easy, why would my latest book be called Dodging Energy Vampires, right? Mm-hmm. Because if you don't get this one, then all the rest of what I've said in my books, the meditations, the diet, the exercise, the chakras, none of it will work if you are living with an energy vampire. None of it. So this is kind of like, this is kindergarten. This is primary school. And you're not going to be able to tell anyone. Let me ask you this. Do you have friends who you can tell they're about to make a bad dating mistake? Like all the guys know, or all the women know for that matter, that this is the wrong person. Red flags are everywhere.
Right.
And yet, sometimes you just have to go and have the experience. It's what you said earlier. You just have to have the experience, because you're not going to learn by someone telling you.
Right.
You have to go and experience the ebullience, the high, the larger than life high of having this gorgeous creature on your arm, this larger than life, charismatic, hilarious person, and enjoy that. And, pride goeth before the fall.
Right.
And then, that you're just going to have that happen. It's interesting. My friend, I have a friend whose first wife was an energy vampire on steroids.
Oh,
and
wow.
His mother, before the wedding, she said to him, "You are making a big mistake. I am only going to say this once, and I'll keep my mouth shut from this moment on." And indeed, I remember when he later got bleeding ulcers, I thought he would die. He finally was able to get out of this marriage. But, you can oftentimes we can see it coming. But once again, what did I say? The only place you can, the only space you can operate and create a life is within yourself. You can't create in anyone else's space. So then my dad, who was a holistic dentist, had a great phrase for this. He said, there's a lot of them, you just have to leave them to Jesus because they're going to go and do what they do. And then I don't know why I can just hear the people who are listening because they're going to have friends or they themselves are the flying monkeys for a vampire where they are defending the vampire. And then the vampire will come home with crocodile tears and say, you're the only one who understands me.
Right.
And then the poor empath, oh God, I'm valuable. Somebody needs me.
Right.
I'm not the piece of shit I thought I was.
Right.
This beautiful creature, this larger than life creature needs me. So I have a purpose in life. And so they'll continue to defend the vampire for many, many times for their entire lives.
Right.
Yeah.
Wow. Yeah, it's an interesting rite of passage, and hopefully this helps someone out there who is in the midst of it to really get some clarity on, okay, enough is enough. I've gotten the message. I'm hanging up the phone, and yes, it's somewhat scary to cut the cord and step out on my own. And yes, they're going to perhaps make it challenging and pull out all the stops. And yet I'm going to, dig down deep and find the power and the willpower and, tap into that self-love and say enough is enough. And, and create the life that I deserve and the relationships that I deserve.
That's right. And so it starts with, would you let a little boy or a little girl, would you suggest that they put up with what you're putting up with? I mean, make yourself into a beloved child.
Right.
And ask if you would you want this for that beautiful 6-year-old? Would you want this kind of treatment for that 6-year-old?
Right.
And if the answer is no, then the answer is no.
That is a great way to frame it. It's a great way to frame it because we're so much quicker to look out for or protect, especially a child, right? So if you realize that you have that, your inner child is alive and well, and be most likely being drained and smothered by the relationship, or as my friend Chris puts it, let's take our relationships and turn them into relationships. And so if you want the elation,
really good.
If you want the relationship, you've got to get out of the relationship. So.
That is fantastic.
Isn't it good? Oh, well, this is so amazing. It's such a great and needed conversation here. And, I'd like, as we kind of wind down here, to switch gears a little bit and get some, the listeners know I love stories of synchronicity or serendipity or positive paranormal stories, and they do too, and most of my guests. And so I'm curious if you have something fun up your sleeve to share for story time.
Okay, well, I have many, many of these, but one that even was, it even blew me away. Okay. So I was at the William Vale Hotel, very high end in Brooklyn. And I was at a mastermind with a bunch of, new age authors and teachers, right?
Uh-huh.
And someone is up there talking about marketing. And she's doing marketing like a career, the kind of lecture that makes everybody who is normal certain that they're not doing enough and that their work will never get out there because they are not up all night pounding the pavement and making the connections. And I mean, it's that kind of thing where you can really get into this negative headspace
Yeah.
about marketing. Okay. And I'm sitting there and I get a text from Tosha Silver, my friend Tosha Silver, who wrote Outrageous Openness, Letting the Divine Take the Lead. I mean, she's the queen of synchronicity, looking for the signs everywhere, whether it would be license plates, the divine is always talking to us, a hawk
always.
flying into your windshield, whatever. So she
Right.
texts me about something, and she says, there aren't too many authors that I even read anymore. And she's talking in the kind of the new age space because they didn't have too much new that she was interested in. And so we're having a little text conversation so that I can deal with my discomfort at this marketing thing that's going on in front of me. And I said to her, there's one book that I recently, I interviewed the author and I just love it. She's the real deal. And it was by Dr. Julie Vaughn, who wrote Spiritual Fertility. But I didn't remember her name at the moment. So I said, well, there's one book that I really think you need to read. And it's on spiritual fertility. I don't remember the author. Okay. At that very moment, her guy is in New Paltz, New York, at a cafe, sitting with this author.
Oh, wow.
And he texts Tosha and he said, I'm sitting with this author, Julie Vaughn, who just wrote Spiritual Fertility.
Wow.
I mean, come on. Come on. I mean, I say, I don't remember the author. And then her beloved texts her, hey, I'm sitting here with Julie Vaughn. I mean, in that moment, we both just laughed.
That's so amazing.
I mean, unbelievable.
It really is. And I've noticed there's been a lot of, it almost seems like more of that instant, manifestation kind of stuff. I just had a friend sharing a story. They were just at Burning Man and, we're talking about that event and how it really creates this this field of possibility. And there's so many, tens of thousands, 70, 80,000 people all together in this very high vibrational state for the most part. And so I've had a lot of magical, powerful stories in synchronicities and things unfold in those sorts of containers myself. And we were talking about this and my friend just got back and they were like, oh yeah, here's a great one that just happened to me. So this little girl came into our camp and, 8, 9 years old and just, started saying, being playful, and he was playing with her and said, oh, can we take this pickle juice that's left over and turn it into and freeze it and turn it into a pickle pop, right? And he's just he's being playful with this little girl and okay, yeah, sure. Here we are at Burning Man. There's no freezers. Let's go on an adventure and see if we can find someone who has an RV with a freezer, and maybe they'll take and we can convince them to freeze our pickle juice and with a stick and this little mold. And so they go around and they go down and they knock on a random RV and say, hey, we're looking for someone who's willing to allow us to freeze this pickle juice in their freezer, and you have an RV, and we figured you might be open and willing to, here's this little girl, be playful with her. And they go, well, we got one better for you. How about this? And they pull out a frozen pickle pop and hand it to her.
What? Oh my God. I never even heard of it, right?
I've never even heard of it either. And they're like, wow, okay. That's the shortcut. So much fun.
It is so much fun when you realize, Matthew Fox way back was excommunicated from the Catholic Church because he questioned original sin. And he wrote a book called Original Blessing. And I believe that, and we just did a little baby blessing for my newest granddaughter. And a friend of mine who was brought up Catholic said, well, baptism is to clear the baby of original sin so that if they die, they won't go to limbo.
Right.
And it never even occurred to me that that's what a real baptism was, because to me, a baptism is where where the soul, this acknowledges this is the first chakra of people and places that I have agreed to be incarnated into, because these are the people who are going to help me fulfill my soul's curriculum. And that to
Right.
me is what a christening is. But I realized, there's all these people brought up with this doctrine of original sin. Like
Right.
you're
I'm
born
broken from the
dirty.
beginning.
Oh my God. I mean, hello. And so the more we tell these stories, right, of the pickle pop and the, Julie Vaughn in a cafe in New Paltz with Bodhi, while I'm sitting there saying to Tosha, who's out in Berkeley, I don't quite remember her name, bam. I mean, the more we do that and the more we speak about it and
Yep.
acknowledge it, then the more likely it is to happen. And that's how I believe we create heaven on earth. So that means it's important to listen to podcasts like this. I never listen to the mainstream news. And I came
Me
home
neither.
last night and my family was listening to John Oliver, Last Week's News Tonight or whatever.
Uh-huh.
And it's so, okay, the man may be a little funny. It's
Yeah.
so mean-spirited
Yeah.
that I couldn't listen.
Yeah.
I couldn't listen.
Yeah.
It's funny, it's cheeky, it's well done, and
Yep.
the energy of it now, it's too low vibration for
Yep.
me. Same
Yep.
with Bill Maher, who's
Yep.
brilliant.
Yeah,
I
agreed.
don't want to be in that vibration. I learned from Julie Ryan, who's a wonderful
She's been
medical intuitive. Oh, so you know Julie.
Yep.
Yeah, I love her. And she said, the mind, thoughts are not in the mind. The mind is a receiving station. It's a satellite dish.
Yep.
So therefore, if you don't like the channel you're on, you got to tilt the dish a different way to get another channel.
Right.
And I think increasingly we just need to change the channel.
Right. Yeah, I agree.
Yeah.
It's funny that you say that. So Julie is a friend as well, and she's been on this show. And then speaking of those late night style shows, she is on my forthcoming new show called Optimistic, spelled MYSTIC, and it's a late night style.
Oh, I like
consciousness.
that.
Isn't it great? It's a late
That's
night style.
really
Consciousness
optimistic.
elevating. Yeah. So we actually are about to release, as of this recording, the trailer. We've got the first few episodes in the can, and we're just about to release the trailer, which I could not be happier how it's turned out. It looks so good, and all the guests, and Julie is actually in that promo reel. And so if you're in the LA area, actually, it would be wonderful. Maybe you could come through and be on, of course, that one's live and direct. I do an opening monologue, and then there's live visionary artist painting and musical performance, high vibe, musical medicine, as I like to put it, then an interview like this,
well,
and a live audience. And
well, when I'm out there, before I come, I'll let you know. Maybe we can set something up.
yeah, that would be wonderful.
All
that
right.
So this has been just absolutely amazing. I so appreciate you taking the time to connect and share, and so needed. And I will add to this, anyone out there, one other thing I like to do with the synchronicity stuff is even take it a step further. So I found when I more playfully engage, like on positivehead.com, there's a game with the YO universe, and you can choose a number between 1 and, at this point, 1,015 episodes. First one that pops in your head, pull that episode up, and there will be a message there that's pertinent for you at this point in your journey. And a lot of people co-create like really magical messages coming through in that way. And so what instantly, as we were talking about the pickle pop, came up as like, if there's someone out there who's really like feeling this episode and realizing they're dealing with an energy vampire, and they need that extra push of, wink from the universe. Like, yes, you take the plunge, step out on your own, get away, cut the cords. I would imagine there will be some pickle synchronicities that pop up. or someone
Oh, there
hears
will
or
be.
sees about a pickle in some weird off the wall way. And so I'm just putting that energetically out there to plant that pickle seed, to give you the extra pickle push you need to make the moves that are going to lead you out of the relationship and into relationships. And, this has been so fun. What is the best way, Christiane, for people to connect, and, follow your work and of course get your book?
The very best way is the website, Dr. Northrup, NORTHRUP.com, and then sign up for my free e-news, so you can, keep listening to what's going on. I also have a Hay House radio show called Flourish. Currently, we're in the 10 years of archives while I take a break, but believe me, I've interviewed wonderful people, so go to hayhouseradio.com, but everything's on drnorthrup.com. The books are everywhere on Amazon and so on. So
Perfect. Well, this has been such a joy. I do have one last question for you here, my cliche closer, and it is this. In 60 seconds or less, what is the meaning of life, according to Christiane Northrup?
Oh, the meaning of life is co-creative joy with God as God comes through you. You're God in physical form. You are the eyes and ears of the universe. You are here to live heaven on earth.
Treat everyone as God in drag. I love it.
Yes.
Oh,
Yes.
Christiane, this has been such a pleasure. Thank you so much for connecting and sharing your wonderful wisdom. And until next time, journey well, everyone out there. Love you so much.
All right. Thank you.
And if you're feeling the call to come for a week retreat style Mystic Manor immersion, remember to go now and book your time to speak with me directly about stepping into the optimistic vortex at calendly.com/talk with Brandon while there are still spots left. Otherwise, I look forward to co-creating magic with you at the Mystic Manor.